Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I have a special guest, a friend, a brother, a comrade, an academic, a young man born in Limpopo Province, and he's going to tell us about his upbringing, Lucky Maluleke. But I wanted to make sure that I say that he is Dr. Lucky Maluleke Msapa. Tell us, welcome, Carl.
Thank you, Gqeberha. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Msapa. Tell us, Maluleke, Msapa, what's the correlation?
Msapa and Maluleke is not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah.
But it is the same thing at the same time.
Okay.
In a sense that if you go to like Giyani, for example, what you will find is that Maluleke is what we will call an official legal surname that's printed on your ID. But Msapa is like your surname that is a family name. So if you go there and you look for like Maluleke, you're most likely not to find me.
Is it?
But you look for like Msapa, you find me.
Is it Sistugo?
It's a grandfather's name. So it was his name, which actually lived down until this generation.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have Dr. Lucky Maluleke Msapa. So you better find him by using the name Msapa. Today, I've invited you to talk to us about your life. You have an interesting life. You have an interesting upbringing that we had an opportunity to talk about. But I want you to just paint for us the kind of a household that you grow up under.
Okay. Interesting. So let's start with my household. My household is big, and my family is actually even bigger. But my household, my father was born around 1913, and in total, he actually had 3 wives, but officially he had 2. So the first wife, he inherited it from his brother. So that was his brother's wife. So when the brother died in the past, you will actually inherit the wife, but it's not an official wife as such until you get to marry your own wife. So he married 2. After that, and my mother is actually the last. And in total, he has about 11 children. And then because the first wife had 4 children, but you don't count them as your own, although they are yours biologically, but they're still your brother's children. But biologically, 2 of them are his blood. So basically, he has got 13 in total, and 2 more who are actually his brother's children. So we grew up living in this one household, so all of us with 5, and he was a migrant laborer in Gqeberha. So he will go for like a year, and he will come around Good Friday and Christmas. So 1 year he will take one of his wives, and then the other one will remain to take care of us, all of us. And then the other one will come. So if you can see that arrangement, so there was a very good arrangement that, so you always have a mother. Around. There's never been a year where we did not have a mother. So that system was working for that migrant labor system. So that is how we grew up. But in 1996, my mother moved to her own household. And yeah, I think I actually grew up there. And of course, when I was much younger.
Before you continue, what a way to start and to introduce oneself. So many things are unique with that upbringing. Perhaps we will explore further. But I wanted him to actually start talking and introduce himself in that particular way. Lucky Maluleke is a doctor of philosophy in education. He specializes largely in TVET and Careership studies. We have a long list of what he has done previously, but he's one of the most interesting characters at the higher education space currently. And secondly, he's one of the most hardworking individuals that I've come across. I've never seen somebody who drives research, who drives also academic writing, and who does it so naturally, like Lucky Maluleke. So that was my brief introduction of Lucky Msapa. Dada, and your mother, you speak so fondly about your mother. You were about to say something?
Yes. So I must say that my mother is an intellectual. And I actually learned a great deal, I must say. And even how I even got to study to become a student at the university, it was because of her. Because she had that particular vision. She always believed in education. And also, she also believed in us. I remember every day, because my mother cannot really read. She can read basically, like, basic text. But I used to actually I used to love agriculture then. So I used to read to her, and she would sit and listen, and she would be asking me questions. And then tomorrow I'll get like 50 out of 50. I'll get 100 out of 100 because I was actually studying with her. So she's been studying with me. That for me was actually very fundamental. And she actually used to work a lot. She was a hard worker. She was a farmer. She's still a farmer even today. And there's one thing that I actually learned from her. And it was during the time when I actually learned about neoliberalism. So I went to explain the theory of neoliberalism to her. And we talked about neoliberalism, and of course in Tsonga. And she was actually saying that, you know what? The problem with the economy is that we don't see that we actually have the resources. So what we do is we leave our resources here in the rural villages, and then we go to Joburg, go to Cape Town, to Durban, just to actually labor. But as soon as you do that, people own you. And then she talked about generosity. And then she said, as soon as you work for money, money comes to your bank account, you will stop being generous. Because everything that you do is you buy, you pay, and buying is very expensive and it's painful. So for you to be generous, you must actually have things in abundance. And having land, having livestock, having a farm where you can grow your food, your generosity will never stop. And when you think of African generosity, it is actually comes from abundance, not from a point of lack where we always, chasing after bonds, debt for a car, So I was like, wow, this is fundamental. And
it's a critique of society.
Yeah, I don't miss this opportunity when I actually critique the current system, even in writing, that this is actually what I learned from my mother. What a philosophy.
Now, you have so many sisters and brothers, and I don't want to skip, but you're not the first doctor in your family.
Yes.
Maybe tell us about your siblings and specifically about the first doctor in your family.
Okay, that's my sister, Kenzani. I come immediately after her. And to emphasize the word immediately. So we are like Irish twins, So she was born in 1985, I was born in 1986. But what's remarkable about her is that she has always been about education. And I must say that I have actually followed in her steps, intentionally so. I think in terms of guidance. And that is actually why I took up the idea of careership. And I want to push the idea of careership further, because the one thing that we lack in our communities is someone close by to talk to, someone who is a doctor, someone who's in engineering, someone who's an author. You get to just see people on TV from America, from other countries, from other parts of the country, but not someone that you grew up with, actually doing the things that you thought were just the things for the TV. But I also want to talk about my other brother. His name is Simon, actually. He went to the military in 2003. And ever since that, he actually carried us. He had this philosophy that he had to actually support us financially. So when my sister went to school, we used to actually get money from him, what he could afford, of course. But his philosophy was that if you support your siblings, later on, your burden will be lighter. And guess where that philosophy actually came from? My mother actually came up with that philosophy, that support your siblings and you won't have to support them in future.
Yes, they must be able to stand on their own.
Yes.
And in that way, even when you age and when your energies are low, you basically have another support structure of people who do not depend on you.
So now, it came from this context, which was very interesting. So now, there was this other brother of mine from the other extended family. So now, they wanted to do, a traditional ceremony. But to do the traditional ceremony, for some reason, traditionally, it is required to be like a collaboration, financially so. You can't do it alone. Even if you have got R1 million in the bank and it requires R1,000, you can't pay that R1,000 by yourself. Everybody has to contribute. But now, there's no one to contribute because he's the only one who's working. He's the only one who has an income. So that ceremony cannot happen, cannot be successful because it is a family thing that must be done. So now she said that is his problem. He should have supported the others so that they also earn an income, so that they can put together the resources, because traditionally that is how, they used to live, that everybody must be supported. And so it was like, support the people. You will see that in the future, if there's a funeral, you won't be the only one to contribute. If there's a ceremony, you won't be the only one to contribute. So your burden, becomes lighter every day. So that's why in Tsonga they say that your success is my success.
How do they say that in Tsonga?
They say kuhumelela ka wena ekuhumelela ka mina.
Ukuphumelela kwakho ukuphumelela kuyam.
Yes, exactly.
And now, any other person that you want to talk about in the family structure before you get to your father?
Before I get to my father, of course, I will talk about my other brother, Philmon. That's his name. But his Tsonga name is Mzamane. And his other name is Rungulane. So now, there's something remarkable. He's a hard worker. And he's good with his hands. When he started his thatching business, which we will talk about later, of course, actually, he employed me. He created a job for me.
How old were you?
I was just after high school, maybe 18, 19.
Okay.
So I was around that age. And when I think of my first job, it's actually with him, and it was apprenticeship. Think about it. He has the craft, and he pulled me in, and I worked with him. So that teaches me a great deal about how, as a family, we can actually pull each other up. Now, for example, we have got young people who are looking for jobs, but they don't have anyone that they know that they can look up to say that.
Especially within the family unit.
Yes.
Within close reach.
Yeah, say my brother has a company, I can work in his company. No, the brother is working and is paying bills. The brother cannot help in that sense. And I think we will actually talk about that later, because that forms a major part of careership.
And you're already prescribing the curriculum for this conversation. That is Dr. Lucky Maluleke, everyone. But I wanted to say, I think thatching in isiXhosa kukufulela.
Even in Tsonga kufulela.
Kufulela, ne?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Xa ufaka ingca ezi-roof, abo bangayaziyo ndiyazi ke abantu balapha ekhaya bayazazi ezinto. So you did thatching. How long did you do that? Did you draw any lessons from that experience?
Say about 2 years. 2 years. 2005, it was not that good because there was drought. 2006, it was booming. But 2007, that's when I went to university. So that's when we stopped. And my brother went to Joburg to work. But let me start with this one. We were the best, by the way. Like,
even if you have to say so yourself.
No. That's why they say that you cannot blow your own horn. Eh?
Yeah.
But when I look at the history of thatching and the people who have been we were the best. And everybody wanted us to actually do their thatching. It was good art because there was a lot of geometry. That actually, when you do a roof, it's like there's a lot of geometry, the angles and everything. And we were actually precise. We even, until today, I've got this skill. When I look at material, let's say we want to do something with material, by looking at the material with the eyes, I can tell you whether it's going to finish the job or not. And that's how that was actually my job mostly, to actually determine the quantity of the material for the entire job. He just let me do that, and he will actually focus on the other. So that skill I actually learned, and I still have it even today. Even with food, I just look at it with the eyes, and I'm like, this is going to be enough for them.
It's like, is it quantity survey?
I'm a quantity survey
person. So it's yes, you want to say something?
I do. I want to say something about that business in particular. People don't do those houses anymore. And if there is a lesson that I can draw from that, is that I would be happy if we were still in that business. Thatching, those upper market properties, because you see hotels, you see B&Bs and guest houses, they actually do that. But at that time, we did not have like a vision to actually, how do we market ourselves to actually get to that level. I think that was one of our downfalls. But another downfall is that we did not move with the times in terms of changing, say, upgrading to like, tile roofs and all those other roofs. So we didn't know. at that time. So we were actually put out of business when things actually changed. And then, of course, we looked at other avenues for survival. But I could say that if you are in a particular craft, particular business, you must actually always understand where the world is going, how things are changing, so that you actually move with the time, and then you don't remain doing the same thing, and then you are put out of business, and then you become like, now you do nothing after that.
Your father was not an ordinary man, was he?
Okay, in two ways. I would say that he was an ordinary man who worked in Joburg. So that was the one part. But when you look at his life, you can actually see some extraordinary things, like how he actually managed to raise, a family of 15 children with little salary, with so much order and so much respect. That is one. And then later on, just a few years before he died, he was actually appointed to be an induna in the local. And that was based on the respect that he had in society, the order that he had, and the intellect. I have never seen, or maybe I have, but my father was an intellectual. He was a deep thinker. And when he speaks, I tell you, it's like philosopher. You know those philosophers that we quote? He was like that. And I think he was best suited for that kind of a position. But of course, in the local villages, there are these oppositions, and people they fight for those kinds of positions. But I still believe that he was suitable because he was an extraordinary intellectual.
So you draw from him leadership attributes and leadership philosophy and the way to carry yourself. What else do you draw from him?
I wouldn't say I draw much. I will be honest with you. I wouldn't say I draw much, but let me just give you a bit of his life. He was very consistent. The most consistent person ever. And I think what actually happened to my life as well is that I had this consistency. The consistency that I don't like now, because the economy does not require consistency anymore. You need to change fast with time. But he has been consistent. But I think most of my life has been shaped by that kind of consistency and not rushing. So it was not this kind of a person who would be excited by new things and then he wants to jump into that and that. He stayed in his lane and he did things in an orderly manner. So I took that, but I actually realized that these days there's a lot that's going on. Our lives are actually different. You actually need. But I think growing up, when I look at everyone in my family, the way that we are, we are nice people, I must say. I would say we are good people. I think most of it actually come from him. I think basically that's what I can actually say, that he has shaped us. He has shaped our habitus,
What is habitus? I want you to talk about that.
If I were to simplify it, I would say it's socialization, but let me not simplify it. Habitus is the internalization of behavior, is the internalization of culture. So it's a French concept that comes from Bourdieu, and he explains how when you look at me, when I speak, I'm actually speaking my history. When I speak, I'm actually speaking my family. Everything that I do is a manifestation of what I have internalized, over the years. And in that sense, it's habitus. It's not habit as such, it's beyond habit.
Yeah.
It's actually deeper than habit. Because the issue with habitus is that there are certain things that are hard to break in your life. You actually need to start now do what we actually call a reflexivity. Beyond reflection. So reflexivity is reflection, but it's actually a deeper form of reflection.
Perhaps a state of being. Okay, let me not even get into that. Because I'm going to drown within this intellectual conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I have Dr. Lucky Maluleke. And you can hear this man is speaking from the heart. And also he's touched by his upbringing and by his socialization habitus. I'm learning now. I'm learning. This is school for me. But now I want you to tell us, how did you get to higher education as somebody who's coming from a rural Limpopo village, and how was that experience for you?
Okay, maybe let's talk about the 2 years before that.
Okay.
2005, I went to the University of Limpopo. And I dropped out within a month. Okay. Rewind. In December, when I received my results, because I wanted to be an engineer, I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be all those things, because that's all we knew, right? That if you want to be successful, you need to be an engineer. And then I realized that I failed maths. And I got 17 for the record, you know?
Young.
17 out of 100.
That's
I was disappointed.
That's
Yeah.
catastrophic.
No. And then science, I got like 33. To be honest, that was expected. I was not necessarily that good. I was outspoken and all that. And I was good with literature, biology, geography, but I was not good with maths and science. Numbers, I was not good. So it was expected, but I was in denial because, when you are younger, you still believe that it can always happen. There will always be a miracle. So I was a little disappointed, and then I went to University of Limpopo and I registered for Bachelor of Arts Psychology. And I thought to myself, what on earth is this? Psychology. Within a month, I was like, I'm quitting this thing. And I deregistered and I went home. And then I stayed that year. My life was like, wake up in the morning, go and stay in the nearest puzzle shop, play cards, do a lot of other things. I even used to make bricks for that matter, bricks for building houses, and people will pay like 10 rand per bag. So basically you make about 50 or 70 bricks and then you get paid 10 rands. And maybe it's 5 of you, you get 10 rand. So if you make, say, for example, you do 5 bags in a day, it means you each get like a 10 rand. So it was tough. But at that time, because we didn't have really responsibilities, that was good because I could buy a time, that's it. That would be it. So I did not see my life as stuck as such. I wouldn't see myself because even in that, there's actually excitement. There's actually comfort because you've got people that are in the same thing with you. If you buy, say, for example, 1 bottle of cold drink, you all share, you laugh, you go home to sleep. It's like, it's done. And then tomorrow is the other day. So when I look at that, I'm like, what was happening there? Until my friend actually pulled me out to come, and he actually made it to a point that I applied to university. I was so comfortable. Okay, I was. I know it's strange to say that you're comfortable in what people will actually say it's stuckness or life of poverty. You're comfortable, but there are joys in there.
There's bliss in that.
There is. Yes. I don't know, but there is.
I know. I do know. It's nice to actually sit around and do whatever people are doing.
Yeah.
It's nothing outside of this normal.
So he pulled me out. He applied for me. He even used his money to apply at university. He only told me just recently why he actually did that. He said, he has studied with many people, but I was probably the most intellectual that he could see. You see? And he had to make it a point that the bursary that he got from university, he would do something for me. And his name is Thabo. Thabo Mavunza.
Thabo Mavunza.
Yes.
I've met him.
He's the one who actually said, I saw so much potential in you. And I was like, no, this potential cannot die. Because that is how the potential in most people dies, Some soccer players, very good soccer players in the rural village, go nowhere. Some people who are good at school go nowhere simply because they don't have someone to identify them, to say that I want to support this person. Because at that time, you don't see further. You only see what everybody sees here. And you have friends who are not even giving you any advice because they also don't know.
Yeah.
You see. So, yeah. But I want to tell you something interesting that happened. So I worked in 2006, and that money that I used to go eat and write the entry test at UKZN. I'm not really a person who believes in miracles, but I think a miracle happened. So I took a bus. I went to Pretoria, and then I took another bus to Pietermaritzburg. And then Thabo is the one who received me because I slept in his room. And he asked me, so how much did you pay for the trip? I said, from Giyani to Pretoria, I paid like 70 rands. And then from Pretoria to Pietermaritzburg, I paid 95 rands. He said, that has never happened. It has never, in the history of buses, it has never happened that you pay such money. then, when we were going back, we went to City Liner. He wanted to see. I went to buy the ticket. It was 90 rands. He said, no ways. This cannot happen. Why is it so cheap for you? And I only have 400 rands that I had worked and saved from the thatching, right? I was like, I don't know. They give me a ticket and it's 90 rands. It has never happened to anybody. Why is it happening to you? And I paid my 75 rand or 75 rands when I actually went back. So that 400 rand was enough for the entire trip. It had never been enough for anybody from Giyani to Maritzburg, and from Maritzburg to Giyani. It has never happened. It only happened to me. And it only happened to me once. Because when I went there in January, just 2 months later, wow, tickets were very expensive.
No wonder you gave Thabo your parka.
Yeah. No, it's a remarkable young man. I respect him in many ways.
So I wanna bring this story now back home in this regard. I launched a book which he edited in 2019. Was it 2019 when we?
No, but it was the COVID years.
It was the COVID years. Yes. My book. And then Parker was one of the sponsors, and they brought 50 Parker pens. I am Parker pens, about 50 of them, and I was able to put these pens onto the hands of people that I knew are actually building a life, an honest and a hard life for themselves. And then one of the reviews, the responses I got, from Ulike, was that he took his parka, as valuable as it was, he took it and gave it to someone else. And there's more people who've done this. Others gave to their fathers, actually. And I made it a point not to dictate to people either what they do with the parka or whether we show everyone who got the parka. But I'm relying on this feedback coming back now. But tell me, why did you give it to Thabo?
I think one sentence. There's no Lucky without Thabo.
Mr. Mavuza.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Now you went to study BA in Social Sciences. Tell us about your qualifications briefly, but I want you to spend more time on your PhD and careership.
Yeah. So basically, I did the extended program, which was actually a good time to think about what I would want to do. But still, I did not know exactly what I wanted to do. So I went to do geography and environmental sciences. And I also did something that I always, told people to say, I am actually doing agrometeorology and environmental biophysics. And they'll be like, wow. And I failed, by the way. So, but geography, I was good. Environmental sciences, I was good. Yeah, it was only that agrometeorology that was actually difficult for me, because it was more about the weather. How you actually, not how you predict the weather or any other thing, but how you even design those instruments to do the weather. That was quite difficult.
It was quite technical.
So, but after that, because I was in my third year of geography, that's when I decided that as much as I'm good in geography and environmental sciences, this is not me. I want a job where I'm going to speak, guys. I just wanted to talk in my job. I did not know exactly what kind of a job. So I went back to finish sociology, and then I went to education and development. And then I did the rural resource management, because those are the things that even when we're doing them, even the projects will take us to communities to actually talk to people. So I'm like, okay, so I'll get a job where I'm going to talk, because I wanted to talk to people. Okay, fine. Fast forward, and then I figured that education is actually where I want to be. So now I'm narrowing it down to say I want to make a contribution in education. So I did an honors in education. I was tempted to do a PGCE, but Prof. Wayne Hugo from UKZN actually said, you know what? Do an honors and you will see big things. That's what he said. And I did honors. And he said, you know what? Do a master's and you will see big things. And then I did master's. But what he meant, now that when I actually think about it, is what my sister usually actually talks about, that in life you choose. You choose a life of comfort, or you choose a life of struggle. A life of comfort will be, I do teaching, then I know I will get a permanent job from the education department, I will have my medical. That is the life of comfort. and then you choose a life of struggle. You don't know what will happen tomorrow. You do your honors, you don't even get a job, you do your master, but the things that you do fulfill you. So I ended up settling for, actually, if I settle for comfort, I'm not going to do justice to my community, I'm not going to do justice to my family, I'm not even going to do justice to my children, because that will be the life I know. How about I face the unknown? Once I face the unknown, I will discover a lot. And I think I will be more useful, not only to myself, but to everybody else.
And that's how you actually got also to your PhD. It was not an easy journey, was it?
It did not even start with a PhD. It started with an internship. When I got that internship, it made no sense to move from Limpopo to Eastern Cape, Port Elizabeth, just to do an internship.
Yes.
It made no sense to anybody. They said, you really do? I'm doing it. Have you been to Port Elizabeth? No. Because the people who will give you an advice will be the people who live the life of comfort. And for them, the road needs to be clearly defined and they have to see their destiny before they get there. And I realized that you don't really get to see the destiny all the time. How about you become the first one to actually do something that other people will not do? And then you realize that you are probably going to be the one to actually, direct them in the future.
And also, they probably advise from the windows of what they know, not necessarily from, the potential that you as an individual have.
That is called habitus. Okay. And we also call it the horizon for action. That if I want to give advice to my child, I will only advise them based on what I know. You see, there was this other day when we went to catch the Mopani worms with Tabo. That's not last year, the other year, which is probably 2020 or 2021, December. So we were having this conversation. He asked me, hey, Mzai, I've got this challenge. We have made it. We've survived. We know how to survive. We won't have a problem surviving. But our children will not necessarily need what we have. They'll probably need a certain level of survival, different things. How do we motivate them beyond what we are doing, beyond what we can do? How do you do that? And then, you know what happened that day? I promised him, and I hope I will still deliver this promise. It may take longer than I created the company first that I call the Inheritors. And I said I want to write a book about the inheritors because we inherited, our children will actually inherit what we are working for. We inherited what our parents worked for. But how do our children move beyond what we have done? That is the question that if we were to even ask the African continent, the African continent achieved independence. How do we move from we have achieved independence? You see, it looks like we have not moved from there. It's like we're going back.
We're still having a big party.
Yeah.
From the independence.
Exactly. How do you move? And that is if each and every individual can say, how do I do better than my parents? But now as parents, how do we guide our children to do better than us? You see, because I said to Tabo, it's hard to motivate them because what you will do is you can't motivate person to maintain the status quo. It doesn't require motivation. It just requires them to do the normal things, go to school, get a job. That's all. But you have to motivate them to do something beyond that. But how do you do it? I don't have an answer, but I believe that this is the question that we need to not only ask, but also answer for ourselves, for everybody else, and also for our country and for our continent for that matter.
In a nutshell, what was your PhD about?
Careership. So, the reason I use the word just careership is because what I wanted to do is that I did not just want to focus on education, because I think it's narrow. To just focus on education, it's actually narrow. So this concept was developed by a man called Phil Hodkinson in the 90s in the UK. It was an older theory. I thought, but the concept is much broader. And I looked for theories, many theories that could actually, I looked for psychology theories that define career. But I found something profound in that, in the careership concept. So now, when I took that concept and I want to understand what influences the career decisions of young people, I actually discovered just a few things. One of them is the horizon for action, that we are blocked. We can only see to that, end. Therefore, we can't think beyond that. One of the reasons is because our families don't give us much knowledge, because they themselves are not, in any field. They don't know what is out there.
In the formal education space, and
if it's education.
Or in the formal economy space.
Think about business. I must say that I watch Vusi Thembekwayo a lot, and I like his talks.
Yeah.
They are profound.
Yeah, he's good.
But now, most of the things that he says, they are practical and they sound simple when he says them. But not so many people are willing
to do them.
To do those things. The reason is because their horizon for action is still limited. You see, so that is one, and we need mentors. You see now, and this is one of the findings of the study, that we need mentors that are actually going to mentor us. You need a Vusi Thembekwayo that you can shake hands with. Hey, Vusi, you need that. You see that this man is actually eating what you are eating every day, and he's actually doing great things. Sometimes we need role models. I think the word is actually role models in society. You need role models in your community. That is actually one aspect of careership. But another, which I also found to be very interesting, is that you as an individual are not necessarily fully responsible for your career. And by career, I don't mean educational route. No. I mean everything. If you want to be in business, be in business. If you want to be in any other field, be in any other field. That is your career, right? That there are other forces, external forces, that actually influence. Therefore, if your horizon for action is limited, you will not understand all those other forces that are going to impact
on you.
Yes.
I want to bring in a couple of things, and I don't want to forget. But I read Magna Carta, Vusi Thembekwayo, and I've also been fortunate to be invited in a space when he was here by Olupumla Joka. Thank you, Mr. Joka. And I've met him in that sense. But I want to come back to, you gave me this book.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
okay.
You bought me, in fact, this is still your copy.
When was that?
I think it was probably 2016 when we were still at SIPSED.
Okay.
I want to talk about the thinking now, the knowledge that should inform this way we view life. You are saying that there's a reality outside our purview. And a lot of people might not know that reality affects them. And I'm thinking about Ivo and Enver, who talk about, that the relationship between education and work, life and work, life and the economy is basically not a linear relationship. There's so many other detours that take place. Talk to us about that reality for us.
Okay. Let me just talk about it from, say, a policy perspective.
Yes.
And how language changes over the years and over time. In the 50s, the policy would talk about employment creation, right? Simple as that. So now the human capital theory was like the theory that actually explains how you get your education, you get your job. The more education you get, the higher position. And that was true, by the way. We wouldn't say it was not necessarily true because the jobs were there. The world itself was still being mined. Like Africa was still like this place where companies will go and create companies, mines, farms and everything. So they needed more people to work. So education made sense if you actually look at the direct relationship between the two, right? So, and then we'll move on. With time, the policy started to change to employment. Now the creation actually just stopped a little bit. And even in the vocabulary of people, right? So now, jobs were there, but now people used to compete for jobs now. Now it's all about employment. So you get your education, you can get employment. So it was no longer the same as we know that there will be a job for you, right? Then that's when people started writing their CVs, dear say or madam, and all that. And then we move to employability, which is totally different from employment. You are not promised employment. The state doesn't even guarantee you employment.
Now the responsibility is yours to be attractive to whoever's going to employ you.
It's on you.
Yes.
Right? It's on you. But now that goes back to my mother, who actually said that if you forsake everything that you have, you cannot create employment for you and for your people. What is going to happen is that you are going to look
and beg.
Now you are going to look and beg from other people. And in that now, there's a problem when we are sitting now. You look at the TVET sector, you look at even the university sector for that matter, it just focuses on employability. Everybody gets this and then you can get a job there. Soft skills, even the skills that are not even related. I mean, think about, you look for a job to be an administrator and then you must have a driver's license and you're not going to drive. So the relationship between education and work, I don't think it's a straight line. I think it's a lie. And I think that thing, I don't think there's any debate now that it's actually not even a straight line. There's no direct relationship between the two. So I think at some point when we actually advise young people, that is actually one thing that I actually do. I focus on that aspect, that the reality is different. It's not like back in the day when people used to have a BA degree and they would be having those cards written Lucky Maluleke, BA, and then it was a big thing. Now you have a PhD and like, okay, thank you very much with your PhD. You know?
Join the club.
Exactly, you have a PhD, so what? What can you do? Let's focus on what we can do. So I was invited to this event to actually talk to young people who were graduating. I said, if we could focus on founding, not finding, you see now, we are focusing on finding now. So we look and want to find. We
need to be establishing.
We must be founding. So that if you found something, wherever you are, you know that your community, that's where they're going to work. That's where they're going to get jobs. That's the only way we can survive.
What's your critique on employee graduate?
What do you mean?
What is your take? Because I'll tell you my honest view. Of course, I want everyone to be employed. I want graduates to be employed. But when we say employ a graduate, the state has given so much money for our education and, tax. We don't pay as much as someone who comes externally, for an example, from other countries. So the state would have subsidized a lot of what we have. But then again, we turn and say, first employ me, and therefore don't pay much attention. Maybe that's not what people are saying. Don't pay much attention to the uneducated, employ a graduate, me, because, I've been promised these things, like I'm demanding. And also, I know it's not all true, because I know everyone must be employed. But then now I realize that if graduates are not employed elsewhere formally, graduates seem to think that they can't do anything with their hands.
Okay.
Why is that? Is that the case?
Let me start with, there was this particular year when Thabo Mbeki came to Nelson Mandela University to talk.
Oh, that was out.
No, he did not use the concept.
Oh, okay.
He said something profound, because one student actually asked the question about graduate unemployment. And Thabo Mbeki said, the problem with the people, these educated people who go to colleges and universities actually think that because they actually went to these institutions, they must get jobs. And I was like, what's going on now? And he said that we forget that there are so many people out there who may not even have an opportunity to study, who must also get the jobs.
Yes.
Right? So when you think from a higher position, you must actually think about everybody. Right? Mm-hmm. So that is one. But now, you asked about the idea of employ a graduate kind of a thing, but I've looked at things like internships, things like learnerships, where the government takes money, give to companies sometimes to actually just employ these people. My view is that I don't think that is the best way of addressing the issue of employment. Right?
It increases precarity.
It's a problem. I think it's a problem because the government is not being proactive. And for the government to be proactive, this is what it means. In South Africa, we drive cars. We don't make them. In South Africa, we fly. We don't make aeroplanes. We take trains. I know there's one company, I'm not sure how many now, that is actually making trains now in South Africa, slowly but surely. But the majority of our trains we don't make. So basically everything that we have, we don't make it as a country, right? If the government could focus, and I'll give you one example. If the government could focus on helping South Africans to actually create these companies where other people can be employed, rather than taking tax money, give it to a company, say, employ this person, and that company cannot necessarily guarantee employment in the future, right? That in itself is a problem because the government is not coming from the position of productivity. Because you want a country that is productive, not a country...
So coming from placement perspective as opposed to producing something.
Think about it. I am 15 years old. I complete grade 9. I go to do NCV. The government funds me through NSFAS. I do NATED. The government funds me through NSFAS. And then I do a learnership after that. The government funds me. And then the government funds... It's like... It's a cycle. Because the money comes from the same
dependency
pocket.
cycle.
You can actually say that.
Okay.
But it charges on the people who pay the tax. And the problem with that, you have got less of those people who are actually paying the tax. And you get less and less of them because your country is not productive. And then you are going to increase the tax. You see, that for me is not proactive thinking. I don't think it's visionary enough.
Do you think that people are just trying to secure their term? Political leaders are just trying to secure their term. Even if we said EPWP placements, they went to 100,000, and we can report that as like my impact on society. And do you think that our leadership is basically looking at that more than they're looking at the long-term purpose of employment?
I think there are two things there. Politically speaking, it's all about terms. We know that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk about that specifically. I just want to talk about the people that you place in government. First and foremost, when you it's a known fact that in South Africa in particular, the people who are placed in government are not necessarily the most competent people. So people are not placed there based on their competency, but based on their affiliation, political affiliation. So that's a known fact, right? But now, if you are given 5 years, the first thing that you actually look is like, what am I going to do after? That is why in a country like South Africa, there's a lot of looting. Because even those programs that we are talking about, employer graduate internships there, those are actually a room for looting as well. Because that is how people actually create even fake training companies, and then the monies are actually, directed to those kind of channels. So there's a lot involved. It's because I don't think people actually see it as a political party to say, guys, let's secure our term. I don't think it operates like straightforward like that to say, let's secure this term. Let us actually just do what we can for this term. But I think there are more dynamics that are actually happening. And if you see people at the top there looting and you're on the ground here, what do? You do the same. So I think there's a lot. But all I can say is that I think we do need to fix how the government operates in South Africa. Because at the moment, I don't think the government is visionary. It has got like a clear vision and a clear agenda to help an African child.
Okay. We are about to close, but just to wrap up this section, why did you give me a Steve Biko book, I Write What I Like? Why would you give any other person that book?
Okay, you probably do not remember this, but when I first met you in 2014, I actually said that you are older than your age. I'm not sure if you remember that.
Yeah, I think
that you are actually an intellectual. You seem to have lived before, and you know these things, And when I read this book, I actually felt like, wow, this book is like so good. And I'll tell you why. And I bought the book. But Irna Senegal also bought me the book. And she said,
oh, yeah.
You are an intellectual. You make me think of Steve Biko. That's what she said. I'm like, me? Because I just say things. I just say things. So I wouldn't say I'm an intellectual. I wouldn't see that, in myself. Although some people actually see that, in me, and they call me to, okay, we want you to talk on this. We want you to talk on this, right? So I read that book, and I just want to actually cite about 2 things from the book to why I thought you should read this book, because you were a leader at that time, and politically speaking as well, and other organizations that you were actually leading. Steve Biko talks about the condition of a black person. That touched me, because what he said there is that the system of apartheid in particular is actually oppressing a black person to a point where they can no longer realize themselves. They can no longer see where they are going. They can no longer think for themselves. It's like they just have to serve this system. That is one. And then later in the book, he says that for Africans to actually emerge out of this situation, first and foremost, they need to actually remove the oppressors from the society. And when he said this, he added that the problem with this idea of reconciliation, thinking that we want to fight so that we sit and negotiate, and then so that we can have this country for everybody, is somewhat problematic. It's problematic because if people do not enter your country in your own terms, they will never have respect for you. If you always operate from a point of being nice, they will never respect you, because if I were to quote Hans Morgenthau, countries seek to dominate each other. And this is what we see. Even when you look at what's happening with BRICS, I know BRICS is the most favorite thing now in Africa. But what is happening is that China is now taking over Africa. Russia will probably be doing the same. Even Brazil is probably going to actually do the same. Maybe India has already done that. So Africa, if I were to quote PLO Lumumba, will always remain piece of cake that everybody wants to eat. We can change friends. We can change our partners. But actually, what are we doing? So from Steve Biko's point of view, we must have a voice, and we must also have a place where we actually dominate something, and we must dictate our own future, and we must craft our own agenda. Therefore, so that when we make a friend, you don't make a friend and you are the submissive one, but you become equal partners. And when I look at your leadership style at that time, I actually realized that you believe that you need to take a stand. You can't be a standless person, So that is why I thought, let me share this book with you, because Steve Biko's book, I write what I like, it's gold.
I enjoyed it. I knew I had to read Steve Biko at some stage, but just that I never got around to doing that. And I actually read, I don't know how many times I've read the book. I like the quote for me that says, we as Africans, we bring to the world a more human face. And that is a mandate that I take so seriously, that we can find an economy also in bringing to the world a more human face, contrary to other people that might be leading in industrial revolutions and all these kind of revolutions. And that if we bring humanity into the world, it's as important a task as other peoples, as Oatam would say, the peoples of the world would actually bring. But now we are closing, and I want to give you an opportunity to reflect on the TVET month that was in August. We didn't get a chance to speak then, but what is in two minutes? What is happening at TVET? What are the most important programs, things? What's happening there?
So okay, as you know that I've been working for TVET for many years. It's like my working life has been about TVET. And in the TVET month, first and foremost, we celebrate TVET. We promote TVET. So that's actually what happened. Although, of course, I will not be able to go to all the colleges, in the country. But yes, of course, I visit the only few that I can actually visit, just to make sure that since I'm working with the colleges all the time, I actually attend some of them. But the things that are actually happening now are in the TVET sector. There are actually changes. TVET is like, it's changing at a fast rate. TVET is now moving back, or not necessarily moving back, but moving strongly towards occupational programs, where programs will be skills-based more than theory-based. So that is a shift, because it gives us a challenge as the people who are training and developing the people who actually teach there. So it gives us that new excitement. It's exciting because now we will be able to actually have a competent graduate when they actually graduate. That's one. But number two, how do we train the people who are actually teaching there? So basically, that is actually the new mandate. But there are actually exciting things. There are even new programs like solar panels. Not just the using of solar panels, installing and all that, but the creation. So TVET is actually the colleges. I know a college in Limpopo, Mopani TVET College in particular, they actually they actually say, no, we are not going to just buy panels from China. We want to make them. So this is the skill that we're actually going to. And when I talk productivity, that's exactly what I'm actually talking about.
Conclude by speaking to that Lucky Maluleke Msapa in Limpopo, in a Limpopo village, in a Transkei, in a KwaZulu-Land. What do you tell them about who they can become?
Okay, so usually we have got a foundation that we call Thabo Maponza Foundation, right? As part of that foundation, so from time to time, we go to young people. And the very first thing that I say to young people is that I have a PhD, but it doesn't mean I talk to you about education. That doesn't. So don't be obliged to want to talk to me about applying to a college or university, because what if that's not your destiny? First and foremost, you need to find yourself. At a young age, find yourself. And once you find yourself, you know what you're good at and you know what you want to do. And then you associate yourself with the people who have done it. And I actually take it from you when I was scared to do a driver's license. And then you said, Chief, if you want to do a driver's license, don't talk to people who failed that thing, because all they will do is that they will just glorify how nice it is to fail a driver's license and you laugh about it. Find someone who actually passed it.
Yes.
And from then, I say to young people, find the people who have actually done something, talk to them, associate yourself with what you define as success. Then that's it.
Yeah. So before people kill me, we're concluding this session, but my take on anything you want to do in life actually is to really look for the people. Like an example of the driver's license is that when I was doing my license, I spoke to people who passed it for the first time around. And that was Sia Taile, one of the people that did that. And so those people who have done it successfully, they tell you how they did it successfully. But people who might have failed it a couple of times, they might want to share a lot about their failures. This is what's going to happen. That guy's going to look at you like this, and then you're going to panic and all of those things. And I realized that actually adds more onto your fear bucket as opposed to your strategic winning direction or process to getting to that. And, I even read the policy on travel license in the country before going to write and test, just to make sure that I do it once and for all, because I was doing it with my student money that I was earning back when I was a student. So thank you so much, Lucky Maluleke, for coming. Dr. Msapa.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much. Your kindness to share, your journey is edifying, and it's helping us to build an ethos of success, of being driven and encouraged about doing life. Because people it's always good to hear what people like you have actually done and where do you come from and what have you achieved. So thank you so much. Hope to see you sometime soon again.
No, thank you for inviting me.
When you are a professor already.
Of course. Thanks leadership for inviting me.